The Secret of the Alien Princess. In a faraway galaxy, among countless stars and shining worlds, there was a kingdom that carried a terrible secret. This secret was not about war, nor about treasure. It was about a single girl, an alien princess, whose face was hidden from all. The princess was known only by her title, the Veiled One. She never appeared before her people without the silver veil that covered her face from forehead to chin. It was said that no one had ever seen her true face, not even the bravest warriors of her race, not even the highest nobles of her court. But why was her face hidden? That question had haunted the galaxy for centuries. Some said she carried a curse so powerful that anyone who looked at her would lose their mind. Others whispered that her beauty was so great that entire armies would kill each other to possess her. Some even believed that she was not truly a princess, but a weapon disguised in human-like form. No matter the truth, one law was clear. No one dared to bond with her. In this kingdom, bonding was sacred, a ritual of life and soul. It was not like human marriage. It was deeper, stronger. Two spirits tied forever. Through bonding, alliances between planets were sealed, peace was created, and families grew stronger. But the alien princess stood alone, rejected by all. Suitors came from every corner of the galaxy. Powerful leaders, cunning merchants, skilled warriors. They all arrived to try, but one by one, they refused when they faced the silver veil. The moment they realized they would never see her face, they stepped back, fearful and uncertain. How could they bond with someone when they did not even know what lay behind the veil? The court laughed at the idea. They mocked her in whispers. They told tales of suitors fleeing in terror. They called her cursed, unwanted, untouchable. And though she never spoke of her pain, her silence carried sorrow heavier than planets. The people said, "No one dares to bond with the veiled princess, not today, not ever." And for a long time that was true. The palace halls grew colder as years passed. The throne beside the king remained empty. The princess walked through corridors like a ghost, unseen, untouched, forgotten. Her eyes glowed faintly behind her veil, but no one dared to look too closely. She was treated more like a shadow than a royal heir, yet the universe has a strange way of testing its people. On one ordinary day, a visitor arrived. A human, unlike others, he did not wear the robes of royalty or the armor of warriors. He was simple in appearance, with no great titles or treasures. His name was not sung in songs, nor was it carved into the stars. But his presence drew attention the moment he entered the court. The alien nobles looked at him with laughter in their eyes. "A human? What foolishness is this?" they whispered. To them, humans were weak, fragile, too emotional for the harsh life among the stars. What could such a creature possibly want in a court filled with powerful races? But the human did not flinch. He did not bow in fear, nor did he back away when whispers grew louder. His gaze moved slowly toward the throne where the veiled princess sat, silent as always. Her silver veil shimmered under the light of the great hall. The shadows clung to her as though afraid to let her go. Every noble expected the human to laugh or to step away in disgust, as countless suitors had done before. Yet something different filled the air this time. The court grew still. The king leaned forward, curious. The human spoke. His voice was calm, clear, and strong. "I have heard the stories of the veiled princess. I have heard the curses, the lies, and the warnings. But I do not believe them. I did not come for beauty. I did not come for power. I came for truth. I came for her." Gasps echoed across the hall. The nobles sneered. "Another fool," they shouted. Some laughed so loudly the walls shook. Others shook their heads in disbelief. They thought the human had no idea what danger he was inviting, but the princess, for the first time in years, raised her head. Her movement was slow, almost hesitant, but unmistakable. She turned her veiled face toward the human. The court fell silent instantly. Every breath was held. Every heart raced. The king's eyes narrowed as though trying to see through his daughter's veil. For a moment, time itself seemed to pause. No one had ever dared to speak so boldly in front of her. No one had ever looked past the veil with such courage. And though the silver cloth still hid her true features, Something about her presence changed. Her silence was no longer empty, it was waiting. The human did not lower his eyes. He did not tremble under the weight of ancient superstition. He simply stood tall, his voice steady. If no one else dares, then let it be me. I will take the risk. And in that moment, the galaxy began to shift. For where others saw a curse, the human saw possibility. Where others feared, he chose to step forward. And so began the story of the alien princess no one would bond with. Until a human took the risk. The human's defiance. The court of the alien kingdom was filled with laughter, whispers, and scorn. The nobles believed the human's words were nothing but a fool's attempt to gain attention. To them, humans were weak, fragile creatures, of flesh and hope. They had no claws, no armored skin, no wings of fire. They were the smallest voice in a galaxy ruled by ancient and powerful races. Yet this single human stood in front of the throne, unmoved by their laughter, his shoulders straight, his eyes steady. He was not dressed like a warrior, not glowing with armor or technology. His clothes were plain, his weapons none. But his presence struck like thunder. The king leaned forward from his throne of obsidian stone. His crown shimmered under the pale light. His voice rolled across the hall like a storm. Human, do you understand what you say? Do you know the weight of your words? My daughter carries a curse that has broken the will of many. If you choose this path, there is no turning back. The nobles clapped their hands in mockery. Some shouted, "Send him away. He is a child. A fool, he does not know what he asks," others jeered. "Let him try, let him be the next to fall." But the human raised his voice, louder than their jeers. "I am not here to mock. I am not here to run away. I came because I believe." His words rang with something the court had forgotten: conviction. The princess, silent as always, shifted on her throne. The veil covering her face shimmered like liquid silver. For centuries, she had sat motionless, her head bowed, her spirit bound by the endless rejection of her people. But now, for the first time, she raised her head fully and fixed her gaze upon the human. Even behind the veil, her eyes glowed faintly like stars struggling to be seen through clouds. The court grew restless. Nobles leaned forward. Warriors clutched their weapons. Some even whispered prayers. No one had seen her react to a suitor in this way. The king's voice boomed again. "You claim belief, human, but belief is nothing without proof. If you wish to bond with my daughter, you must face the ritual of defiance. It will test your spirit, your mind, and your blood. It has broken the strongest of champions, and it will break you." The court roared with approval, eager to see the human humiliated. Some shouted, "Yes, throw him into the fire of truth." Others laughed cruelly. The human will not last a single breath, but the human did not falter. He looked directly at the king, his voice calm. "Then I will face it." Silence fell. The air grew heavy. The torches flickered as though the hall itself held its breath. The nobles looked at each other in disbelief. They had seen giants fall, they had seen warlords crawl out broken from the ritual. How could this fragile creature, with no strength or weapons, dare to walk into such doom? The king's eyes narrowed. His voice softened but carried more danger than before. "You understand, human, once you begin, there is no return. The ritual accepts no surrender. Either you prove yourself, or you are consumed." Still, the human did not move, did not hesitate. His words came steady. "I know, and I am ready." For the first time, the princess stirred. She placed her hand gently on the armrest of her throne. The silver rings on her fingers glimmered faintly, though she said nothing. Yet her silence now carried weight. It was as if she was waiting, watching, hoping. The king raised his hand, and the great doors of the hall rumbled open. Beyond them was a long passage filled with shadows and flames, the place where the ritual of defiance had broken countless souls. The nobles cheered with cruel delight. Some whispered, "The human will scream, the human will fall." Others leaned forward, eagerly, wanting to see the fragile creature destroyed by the ancient test. But as the human stepped forward, something strange happened. Instead of fear, there was calm in his stride. His footsteps echoed like the sound of destiny moving forward. The princess lowered her head slightly, but her fingers gripped the throne tighter. Behind the veil, her heart began to race. For centuries she had watched every suitor fall before even reaching her. But this one, this human, he did not tremble. The court watched in silence as the human walked into the shadows of the ritual chamber. The massive doors closed behind him with a boom, sealing him inside. Within, darkness greeted him. The air was thick and heavy. Flames danced along the walls, whispering strange voices. Illusions flickered. Faces of fear, visions of failure, shadows of death. It was a place designed to break the spirit before breaking the body. And yet, he kept walking. His heart raced, but he did not falter. His mind whispered doubts, but he silenced them with a steady breath. For he had not come for glory nor for power. He had come for truth. He had come for the princess. Outside, the nobles leaned forward, waiting for the scream they believed would come. The king sat in silence, his gaze sharp. The princess's hands trembled slightly against the throne. Minutes passed, then more. The silence stretched, and then a sound echoed from the chamber, not a scream, not a cry, but the steady rhythm of footsteps. The human was still walking. The court gasped. Some shouted, "Impossible!" Others shook their heads in disbelief, but the princess closed her eyes. Behind the veil, for the first time in centuries, she felt something stir inside her. Something she thought was long dead. Hope. And so the human's defiance became more than a choice. It became the spark of a story that would shake the galaxy itself. The forbidden bonding ritual. The heavy doors of the ritual chamber closed behind the human with a thunderous boom, sealing him in darkness. The sound echoed through the great hall like a final judgment. Outside, the nobles smirked, confident they would soon hear the screams of another failed suitor. For centuries, none had survived what lay within. The chamber was older than the kingdom itself. It was carved from black stone that seemed to breathe with a life of its own. Strange runes glowed faintly on the walls, written in a language so ancient even the priests no longer understood it. Flames flickered in deep cracks, but they gave no warmth. Only cold light that twisted shadows into shapes of terror. The human stood still for a moment, breathing slowly. His heart raced, but he forced his steps forward. Unlike the nobles who entered here in pride or fear, he walked with a quiet purpose. He had not come for treasure, nor for power. He had come for truth, and for her. The first test revealed itself in whispers. Voices rose from the shadows, soft at first, then louder. They were not the voices of strangers, but familiar ones. He heard his family calling, old friends crying, mentors warning him to turn back. Each voice carried doubt, fear, and sorrow. Most who entered broke here, crushed by the weight of voices they loved. But the human pressed forward. He knew they were illusions, tricks of the chamber. His voice was steady as he whispered back into the darkness, "You are not real. I will not turn away." The shadows hissed, twisting in anger, and the path ahead burned with red fire. The second test was fire, not ordinary flames, but living ones. They reached like hands, grasping at his skin, seeking to devour. The nobles watching through the scrying flames outside leaned forward eagerly, waiting for his cry of pain. For no one escaped the fire without screaming. But the human walked slowly through, his arms shielding his face. He felt the searing heat, but he did not break. Instead of fighting the flames, he let them pass over him. He accepted their pain, but did not give them fear. When he stepped out, the other side, smoke clung to his clothes, but his eyes were unshaken. The court gasped. Some nobles whispered, "Impossible." He passed the second trial. The king remained silent, but his hands gripped the arms of his throne tightly. The princess, hidden behind her silver veil, leaned forward slightly. Her heart pounded faster than it had in years. But the chamber was not finished. The third test was the trial of truth. The human stepped into a hall of mirrors, each one reflecting not his body, but his fears. In one, he saw himself kneeling, broken, mocked by the nobles. In another, he saw himself turned to ash by the fire. In yet another, he saw the princess lifting her veil, revealing not beauty, but horror. Her face twisted into a nightmare meant to drive him mad. Most who entered fell to their knees here, their minds shattered by the sight of their deepest fears. The human paused. His chest rose and fell heavily. His hands trembled for the first time. The fear was real, powerful, threatening to drown him. But then he whispered to himself, "Fear is only fear. It cannot kill me unless I let it." He turned away from the mirrors, refusing to believe their lies. The glass cracked, shattering, into dust. The path forward opened. Outside, the nobles shouted in disbelief. Some slammed their fists in anger. This cannot be. No human could survive this long. Others began to grow nervous, wondering if something greater was unfolding. The princess closed her eyes for a moment, her lips pressed together behind the veil. For the first time in centuries, she whispered words only she could hear. "Please, do not stop." The chamber rumbled as though it heard her prayer. The fourth test awaited, the test of the soul. A great chasm opened before the human, bottomless and endless. A single narrow bridge of stone stretched across. But the bridge shifted, crumbled and reformed like a living snake. The human stepped onto it, his balance wavered, but his determination did not. Halfway across, the chamber struck again. Shadows rose from the abyss, taking the form of the nobles. They laughed, they spat, they called him worthless, weak, foolish. They told him he would die alone, mocked by the stars. The human stopped, his fists clenched. He felt their hatred press against his heart like a weight of iron. But instead of answering with anger, he whispered softly, "I am not here for you. I am here for her." The shadows hissed and fell back into the abyss. The bridge steadied beneath his feet and he reached the other side. The final chamber was silent, utterly silent. Here, the ritual waited for its end. A single throne of black stone sat in the center. Upon it rested a silver crown. If he placed the crown upon his head, the bond would be acknowledged by the chamber itself and he would be judged worthy, or destroyed. The human walked forward, each step echoed like thunder. He reached out his hand and touched the crown. Outside, the court leaned forward, the king's eyes blazed, the nobles fell silent, and the princess, her hand trembled as she gripped the edge of her throne. The human lifted the crown. His voice rang out clear and strong. "I choose her, not for power, not for beauty, not for gain. I choose her because she has been left alone. I will not turn away." The crown flared with light. The chamber shook as though the stars themselves cried out, then silence. The doors opened, slowly, heavily, and from the darkness the human stepped out. The crown upon his brow, his face calm but unbroken, his eyes steady. The nobles gasped. Some cried in anger, others in awe. For centuries, the ritual had broken, every suitor. But the human had endured. The king rose from his throne, his voice thundered through the hall. "The ritual has spoken, the human has defied it and lived." The princess rose as well, her veil shimmering like starlight. For the first time, she bowed her head slightly toward the human, a silent acknowledgement, and so the ritual of defiance ended, not in failure, not in death, but in the triumph of a single human who dared where no one else would. But this was only the beginning, for the veil of the princess still remained, and her greatest secret had yet to be revealed. The face behind the veil, the chamber of silence, had ended. The ritual was complete, and the human had returned alive. The crown rested upon his head, glowing faintly as if the chamber itself had accepted him. The nobles who once laughed now whispered nervously. Some shook their heads in disbelief, others stared with wide eyes. For the first time in centuries, the impossible had happened. Someone had survived. The king's voice shook the hall. "The ritual has spoken. The human has proven his spirit. By the law of our people, he may claim the bond." The words fell heavy across the chamber. The nobles erupted in protest. "This is madness. A human cannot bond with the princess." One cried, "It is forbidden. He is not of our kind," shouted another. Their voices clashed, filling the air with anger and fear, but the king silenced them with a raised hand. His gaze turned toward the throne where his daughter sat, silent. As always, hidden behind the silver veil. Her figure was still, but her hands trembled faintly against the armrest. Her breath was soft, almost too soft to hear. The king's voice grew quieter, but it carried more weight than thunder. "Daughter, the ritual has chosen, but the final step is yours. Do you accept?" The hall froze. Every noble leaned forward. Every guard gripped their spear tighter. Even the flame seemed to still. For centuries, she had rejected all, or rather, all had rejected her. Now, at last, one stood before her, unafraid. The princess rose slowly from her throne, her movements graceful but heavy with centuries of sorrow. The silver veil shimmered like liquid starlight, hiding the truth beneath. She stepped down from the throne, each step echoing across the silent hall. The human stood tall, his eyes steady. He had walked through shadows, through fire, through fear, and he had not fallen. Yet here, in this moment, his heart raced louder than ever, for the veil was not just cloth. It was the symbol of her curse, her mystery, her pain. The princess stopped before him. She was close enough that he could feel the faint warmth of her breath through the veil. The air between them felt alive, heavy with tension and expectation. Her voice came at last, soft, trembling but clear enough for the hall to hear. It was the first time she had spoken in many years. "Do you truly not fear me?" The hall gasped. Many had forgotten the sound of her voice. It was like music carried by sorrow. The human answered without hesitation, "No, I do not fear you." His voice was steady, firm, carrying not just courage but truth. Her fingers rose, slowly trembling as they reached for the veil. The hall grew colder. Some nobles shouted, "No, do not remove it. The curse will destroy us all." Guards stepped back in fear. Even the king clenched his fists, torn between love for his daughter and fear of the legends. But the princess ignored them all. Her hands gripped the silver cloth. For a heartbeat she froze. Then with a single motion she lifted the veil. The hall erupted in gasps. Some fell to their knees, others turned away in terror. Her face was revealed, but there was no monster, no horror, no twisted curse. Instead, her face was achingly beautiful. Not in the shallow way of perfection, but in a way that carried the weight of sorrow. Her eyes were deep, glowing faintly like galaxies trapped in crystal tears. Her skin shimmered with a faint light, almost too delicate for the world, yet her beauty was not what silenced the court. It was her sadness. Her expression was not of pride or power, but of endless loneliness. She had been hidden not because of a curse, but because of fear. Her people feared her power, her glow, her difference. They had called it a curse to hide their shame, and so she had lived in silence, unseen, untouched, forgotten. The nobles trembled. Some cried out, "It is a trick. It must be." Others fell silent, ashamed of their lies, but the human did not turn away. He did not shield his eyes. Instead, he stepped closer. His gaze met hers, and in that moment he spoke. "You are not cursed. You are not something to fear." Her eyes widened. For centuries, every suitor had fled. Every voice had called her cursed. But here stood one who saw her not as a monster, not as a danger, but as someone. Tears welled in her glowing eyes. For the first time, she let them fall. Her voice trembled as she whispered, Why do you not fear me?" The human's answer was simple. "Because fear is a lie, and you deserve to be seen." The hall shook with silence. The nobles could not believe what they heard. The king's stern face cracked, showing sorrow and regret. He knew the truth, but had buried it under fear of rebellion. He had let the lie of the curse grow. The princess's lips trembled. Her heart raced faster than ever. For centuries, she had prayed for someone to look past the veil, to see her as she truly was, and now, finally, one had. The human extended his hand toward her, slowly, gently, as if offering not possession but choice. The entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Would she take it? Her fingers trembled. For a moment she hesitated, afraid that even now, it was just another illusion. But then, she placed her hand in his. The hall erupted with cries, some of outrage, others of awe. The bond was not yet sealed, but in that moment, something shifted. The veil of lies had fallen, and truth had taken its place. The princess lifted her head, higher, no longer hiding. Her eyes glowed brighter, not with sorrow, but with something new, something fragile yet powerful. Hope. The human held her hand firmly. His voice rang clear across the hall. I did not come for power. I did not come for beauty. I came because no one else would. And now I see why. I see the truth. The king closed his eyes, his heart heavy with guilt. He had hidden his daughter behind a lie to protect his throne, to silence fear. But the human had broken that silence. With nothing but courage, the nobles were left trembling, some too afraid to speak, others too ashamed. The court that once mocked now stared at the bond forming before their eyes. And so, the face behind the veil was no longer a secret. It was not horror, not curse, but sorrow and strength. And in the hand of a human that sorrow found light. But the bond was not yet complete. The true test was yet to come. For the princess carried a power that had been hidden, a power her people feared more than her face, and now with the veil gone, the galaxy would soon learn of it. The human had taken her hand, but the choice ahead would demand far more than courage. It would demand sacrifice. And so the story continued, as the galaxy trembled before what was to come. The choice that changed the galaxy, the hall was silent. As though the universe itself was holding its breath, the veil had fallen, the princess's true face revealed, and the human stood with her hand in his. It was a moment no one had dared imagine, a moment that shattered centuries of fear and tradition. The nobles trembled, some shouted in rage, "This is forbidden. The bond cannot be with a human." Others fell silent, ashamed of their lies, afraid of the truth they had helped to build. The king's face was pale, his eyes heavy with conflict, for he knew the law was clear. The one who survived the ritual was worthy, yet his heart warred. With fear of what such a bond could mean, the princess, standing with her hand in the human's, looked at her father. Her voice was soft but carried strength that had been buried for centuries. "Father, I accept him." Gasps filled the chamber. The nobles erupted again in protest. "No, we cannot allow this," they cried. "A human cannot be royal. He cannot sit beside the throne." But the princess ignored them. She turned to the human, her eyes shimmering with tears she had long held back. "You chose me when no one else would. You saw me when all others turned away. For that I choose you." Her words shook the court more than the ritual itself. The human's expression remained calm, but inside his heart thundered. He had taken the risk, walked through fire and shadow, faced illusions and fear. But none of that compared to this. The moment she accepted him, the king rose from his throne, his voice boomed like thunder. "The bond is not yet complete. To seal it, both must stand before the flame of unity. Only there will your choice be tested." The flame of unity. It was the oldest right of their people, a fire said to burn with the truth of the soul. If the bond was false, the flame would consume both. If it was true, the flame would weave their lives together forever. The hall grew tense. Nobles whispered prayers for the fire to burn the human to ash. Others whispered in fear, wondering if the flame would prove him worthy. The princess turned to the human. Her eyes searched his face. "If we enter the flame, there is no return," she whispered. "If it rejects us, we die." The human met her gaze without hesitation. "Then let it be so. I did not come to live in fear. I came to stand with you." Her lips trembled. She had waited centuries for someone to speak those words, to choose her not for duty, not for power, but for her. She tightened her grip on his hand and nodded. The great hall's doors opened, revealing a chamber deeper than all others. At its center burned the flame of unity, a fire not of wood or fuel, but of pure light. It burned white and blue, swirling like a living star. Its heat was not felt on the skin but in the soul. Together, the human and the princess walked forward. Their steps echoed in unison. The nobles fell silent, fear and awe freezing them in place. Even the king's breath caught in his throat. They stood before the flame. The human looked at it, calm, his voice steady as he said, "I am ready." The princess looked at him, then at the flame. For centuries she had been told she was cursed, that no one would ever accept her. Yet now, at this edge of destiny, she felt stronger than she ever had before. Hand in hand, they stepped into the flame. The court gasped. Some cried out in horror, expecting their screams, expecting their bodies to fall as ash. But there was no scream, no fire that consumed. Instead, the flame wrapped around them like a living wind. The light swirled higher, brighter, filling the hall with blinding radiance. The human felt the fire touch his heart. It showed him visions of her life, her endless loneliness, her silent tears, the centuries of rejection. He saw her pain, and instead of turning away, he held her hand tighter. The princess felt the fire too. It showed her his life, a fragile world of humans, their laughter, their struggles, their endless will to rise again even when broken. She saw his courage, his refusal to yield even when the galaxy mocked him. The flame roared, testing them, pushing them, but neither let go. And then it bowed. The fire lowered, its light softening, wrapping them gently before fading back to its place. The hall stood frozen as the flame of unity flickered once more, then settled, calm as though satisfied. The bond was complete. The nobles fell, silent. Some trembled in fear. Others lowered their heads in shame. For the flame itself had accepted what they had rejected. The king's eyes filled with tears. His voice broke as he spoke. "So it is done. The bond is sealed. The human is chosen." The princess stood tall beside the human. Her silver veil was gone, her face revealed to all. And now she stood not as the cursed daughter, but as the rightful heir of hope. The human lifted his head. His voice rang clear. "This bond is not just between us. It is a bond between our peoples, a bond that no fear, no lie, can break." The hall shook with the power of his words. The nobles had no reply. For centuries they had hidden behind lies, but now the truth blazed brighter than the veil ever could. From that day, the galaxy would remember the choice, not just the princess's choice to lift her veil, not just the human's choice to risk the ritual, but their choice to stand together in the flame of unity. It was the choice that changed everything, a choice that broke curses, shattered fear, and rewrote destiny. And though the nobles whispered in secret, though enemies plotted in shadows, the truth could not be undone, for the flame had spoken. The bond was real. The princess looked at the human, her eyes no longer filled with sorrow but with light. She whispered so softly that only he could hear, "You gave me back my life." And he answered with a smile, "You gave me something worth risking it for." The court could do nothing but watch. For in that moment they realized the truth. A single human's choice had shaken the galaxy, and nothing would ever be the same again. The princess's secret power, the flame of unity, had spoken. The bond was sealed. The human and the princess stood hand in hand, their spirits tied together in a way no power could deny. The nobles who once mocked now stood in stunned silence. Their protests died in their throats, for no one could stand against the will of the sacred flame. But even as the fire dimmed, the hall trembled with an energy that was not from the ritual. It came from her, from the princess herself. For centuries her people had hidden her behind the veil. They told the galaxy she was cursed. They whispered lies of madness and death, but the truth was something far greater. The princess's eyes glowed brighter than before. The silver light spread from her gaze, spilling into the air around her. The human felt her hand tremble in his, not with fear, but with power awakening. The king's face turned pale. He rose from his throne, his voice breaking. "No, it is too soon." The nobles gasped. Some fell to their knees, others staggered back, their voices trembled. It is happening, her power, she cannot control it. The human turned toward her, his grip steady. What is this? What are they? Afraid of? The princess closed her eyes, her voice came like a whisper, heavy with sorrow. This is why they hid me. This is the truth of my curse, not my face, but what lies within me. Light flared from her body, spilling across the hall like waves of silver flame. The walls shook, the floor cracked, the torches flickered and died as her power consumed the air. The nobles screamed, some running for the doors, others covering their eyes, but the human did not let go. His voice cut through the chaos, calm and steady. You are not cursed, do not fear it. The princess's power surged higher. Images formed in the light, visions of stars collapsing, of worlds breaking, of armies falling to their knees. She was not just royalty. She was something older, something born of the stars themselves. The king's voice boomed in despair. Her blood carries the power of the first flame, the power to destroy or to unite galaxies. That is why we hid her. That is why no one could bond with her. For if her heart was corrupted, if her bond was false, her power would tear everything apart. The hall shook harder. The ceiling cracked as her light reached higher, threatening to burst free into the skies above. The princess trembled, her voice cracked. I cannot hold it back, it is too much, I will destroy everything. But the human stepped closer, pulling her hand against his chest. His voice was firm. You will not destroy, you will choose. Your power is not a curse. It is a gift. And I will not let you face it alone. Her eyes widened. His words cut deeper than the fear. For centuries she had been told she was dangerous, untouchable, cursed. Yet here was someone who did not step away, who did not call her a monster, who dared to stand in the center of her storm and hold on. The light surged once more, so bright it blinded the court, but instead of exploding outward, it began to bend, drawn toward the human's steady presence. His bond with her anchored the power, shaped it, calmed it. The nobles gasped as the light formed into wings of silver flame behind her, great and shining, not of destruction, but of majesty. She no longer looked cursed. She looked like a queen born of starlight. The king fell, back into his throne, tears in his eyes. So it is true. Her power can be guided, not feared, and only a human, only one untainted by our lies, could help her control it. The princess looked at her hands, trembling as the silver fire burned gently in her palms, not wild, not destructive, but alive. Her voice shook. I can control it with you. She turned to the human, her eyes glowing. You are my anchor. The hall was silent. The nobles could only watch as the truth unfolded. Their greatest fear had been their greatest hope all along. The power they had hidden away could now become the key to their survival, but silence did not last long. From outside the palace came the sound of horns, war horns. The great doors rattled as messengers rushed in, their voices panicked. Your Majesty, the outer defenses are collapsing. The enemy fleet has arrived. The court erupted in chaos, nobles shouted. Soldiers ran for their posts. The king's face hardened, his voice thundered. It is the Dravari. They come for her. They always feared her awakening, and now they seek to claim or destroy her. The human looked at the princess. Her silver wings flickered behind her like living light. They came because they knew this day would come, he said softly. But we will not let them take you. The princess straightened. Her sorrow was gone. Her fear replaced by resolve, she stepped forward, her silver fire flaring brighter. Her voice was steady, regal, filled with the weight of destiny. No more hiding. If they come for me, then they will see me, not as a curse, but as their end. The king bowed his head. For centuries he had hidden her power out of fear. But now, as he looked upon his daughter standing tall with her chosen bondmate, he knew the truth. Go, my daughter, show them who you are. The human tightened his grip on her hand, his voice calm. You are not alone. Not anymore. Together, they stepped toward the great doors. Beyond them lay the galaxy waiting in fear. Beyond them lay enemies who had plotted for centuries. Beyond them lay the chance to turn fear into strength. And as the doors opened, the court saw not a cursed princess, but a queen of light, her human beside her, their bond unbroken. The galaxy was about to change again. For the princess's secret, power was no longer hidden, and with a human at her side it would not destroy. It would reshape destiny itself. Humanity's legacy war drums shook the sky as the enemy fleet closed around the planet like a ring of iron. The Dravari ships were vast and cold, shaped like knives in storms. Their engines hummed with a dark hunger. Their commanders believed this day would end an old fear. They came to capture the princess or end her light forever. The palace terraces opened to the night. The winds carried the smell of metal and ozone. Soldiers lined the walls. Nobles hid behind pillars. Priests whispered old prayers. The king stood like a mountain, but even mountains tremble when the sea rises. The princess stepped forward with the human at her side. Silver fire gathered at her shoulders like living wings. Her face was calm, her eyes bright. The human's hand held hers, steady as a promise. He was only flesh, only bone, but his courage had the weight of a star. A message cracked across the sky from the Dravari flagship, a voice like broken glass. "Surrender the Starborn or we tear this world to ash," it said. The words rolled like thunder over the cities and the deserts. The nobles pressed back in fear, some whispering to the king to give her up, to save the throne, to save themselves. The human lifted his head, his voice carried across the terrace, soft but clear. They do not fear her alone. They fear what she awakens in others. If she stands, others will stand. If she loves, others will love. That is what tyrants hate. That is what tyrants try to burn. The princess turned to him. Her lips trembled, not with fear but with feeling. "Then let them see us both," she said. They rose into the air together, her light carrying them. The night opened, and the stars watched. The fleet of knives drew nearer, their weapons like red eyes waking. The first volley fell. Spears of fire cut down through the clouds, palaces shook, towers cracked. Soldiers raised their shields and braced. The princess lifted her hand and her silver flames curved into a great veil across the sky. The fire struck the veil and spread like rain on glass, falling harmless into the sea. The Dravari roared. Their second volley turned the horizon white. The human's voice cut through the roar. "Do not meet their hate with more hate," he said. "Shape it, hold it, guide it." She obeyed, for the flame had always listened to her heart, not to her fear. She bent the storm. She poured power into a ring of light that circled the planet, not a wall to choke the sky, but a river to carry the fire away. The moon shone through the river, and the world below took a breath. Yet strength alone would not end this night. The Dravari were not a single blade. They were 1,000 knives, and 1,000 knives cut deep. Their war leaders had trained for this for generations. They sent hunters to break the ring of light. They sent saboteurs to strike the palace heart. The human saw the pattern in their movement. He had no wings, no flame, but he had the craft of a mind that learned from loss and from love. He pointed to the shadow gaps between the enemy lines, the places fear had left open. He spoke quickly, to the princess, to the captains, to the guards. "Do not chase their strongest ships. Close the paths where they are sure we will not look. Protect the soft places first, then the hard places will have nowhere to hide." Orders flew like arrows. The ring of light thickened at the edges where it had been thin. City shields rose where they had been forgotten. The palace opened its old tunnels to move children and elders to safety. The army turned from pride to protection, and that change saved 1,000 lives before dawn touched the clouds. The Dravari flagship pressed closer. The voice of broken glass returned, colder now. "You are not a queen, you are a torch. Torches burn until nothing remains. Surrender to the blade that ends the fire." The princess answered, her voice like a bell. "If I was only fire, I would agree. But I am not only fire, I am also a choice." The enemy laughed. It was a hard sound. Taught by old fear, the flagship opened its central maw, a cannon that drank light and returned emptiness. One blast could cut a mountain in half, one more could open the skin of space. The human felt the air thin around them as the cannon drew breath. He knew her silver flame could stop one blast, maybe two, but at a price that would crack her heart. He turned to her, his eyes steady. "Let me go to them," he said, her fingers tightened around his. "They will kill you." "Then they will prove themselves wrong," he answered. "Let me go, not to fight, to speak." The king cried out from the terrace below. "No human ship can cross that fire." The nobles shook their heads. Soldiers begged him not to try, but the princess looked into his eyes and saw the same quiet strength that had carried him through shadow and flame. She placed her palm against his chest, her silver wings folded around them both for a heartbeat. "I will not let you go alone," she said. They flew together toward the wound in the sky where the flagship waited. Smaller ships broke from the Dravari line to cut them down. The princess did not strike them. She pushed them aside with soft force. The human sent out a signal, simple and old, the oldest signal in the long night. It was the rhythm of a heartbeat, a call that said, "We are alive, we are here, we are not your prey." The flagship hesitated, the cannon's mouth flickered, the voice of broken glass returned, lower now. "Why do you come without a sword?" The human spoke, and his words were plain. "Because a sword is what you expect. Fear taught you to see only blades. You were born into fear, trained by fear, paid by fear. Fear told you she was a monster. Fear told you humans are a trick. I am not a trick. She is not a monster. Look at us without the stories that chain you." Silence. Then a new voice came, older, tired, a voice of someone who had carried armor too long. "If the starborn rises, we fall," the voice said. "Our elders taught us this. Our maps are written with it. Our laws are built on it." The princess answered, "Your elders built a prison and then forgot. They were inside it. I did not rise to burn your home. I rose to end a lie. Lay down the blade and I will lay down the fire. Keep the blade and the fire will answer, not to kill you, but to stop you from killing what you fear." The cannon dimmed for a breath, then blazed. The tired voice fell away. The knives around the flagship turned toward the planet again. The orders had gone to the hard men who only know one song. The human looked at the princess. He saw the ache in her eyes, not from power, but from knowing what would come if words failed. "One more try," he said gently. "But if they strike, I will not ask you to hold back." He closed his eyes and spoke on all channels at once, not to commanders, but to crews, to pilots, to the small voices inside the knives. "Do you have someone who waits for you?" he asked. "Do they live under a roof? Do they sleep near a window? Do they laugh when the light comes through? If you fire now, their world will burn the same way your world would burn if someone like you stood where I do. If you drop the blade, you can go home and look into their eyes. If you do not, there will be no eyes to meet." On the bridge of the flagship, a young navigator's hands shook. In the gun deck of a destroyer, a mechanic thought of his sister. In a carrier's dark corridor, a pilot touched the charm his child had pressed into his hand. The knives wavered only for a breath. But a breath is space enough for a seed. The flagship fired. The beam surged like a river of night toward the world. The princess rose to meet it. The human's hand held her like an anchor holds a ship. She did not try to crush the beam. She curved it, turned it, bled it into the ring of light she had made. The ring buckled, screamed, then held. The sea boiled, mountains groaned, but the cities lived. The Dravari saw a thing their elders had never told them. They saw power that chose restraint. They saw a torch that refused to burn the house. They saw a human who did not hide behind the torch, but stood. In front of it, the tired voice returned, a whisper now. "Stand down," it said to its own. "Stand down." The cannon dimmed. The knives folded their wings. One by one, ships powered down their guns. Signals rippled through the fleet. Not in the language of orders, but in the language of relief. The ring of light thinned and then became gentle, like dawn. The princess lowered her hands. The human's breath shook. And he laughed softly, not in pride, but in wonder. They returned to the terrace. The king bowed his head to them, not as a ruler to subjects, but as a father to a child who had become more than a legend. The nobles did not kneel from fear. They bowed from the strange new weight of respect. The Dravari asked for parley, not in secret chambers, but on an open plain under the sky. The princess went. The human walked with her. They faced the commanders and the crews, and also the families who had crossed the void to stand behind the blades. The first accord was spoken and sealed that day, not with ink but with 3 vows. The first vow said no bond would be broken by lies. The second vow said no weapon would strike a city first. The third vow said no child would be taught that. Another child was born to be feared. From that day, the princess's name no longer meant curse. It meant bridge. Her silver fire became a symbol not of war but of a path through storms. The human's name became a word used in markets and in schools. For the moment you choose the hard good over the easy safe. Years moved, not in silence, but in building. The Academy of Bonds rose on a hill where the wind was kind. Humans and aliens studied there. They learned the old songs of the flame and the new craft of peace. They trained guardians who could turn a battle by saving one life. At the right time, they trained speakers who could find the true question inside an angry shout.